So in this video, we're going to talk about cellular transport. What cellular transport is things going in and out of the cell. Remember, it is that lipid bilayer on the plasma membrane that determines what can go in and out of the cell. And there's two main types, passive transport and active transport. So let's look at things going in and out of the cell. So sometimes things are really small and they can just kind of go through this lipid bilayer. Even sometimes some larger ones can scoot by there. Sometimes they're not going to be able to go through, and so we're going to be talking about that. And sometimes we get some ions that don't have the ability to go through as well, either in or out of the cell. So we're going to be talking about that through the semester. So this video is going to concentrate on passive transport. So let's talk about what passive transport is. So passive means that it is movement that is going what we call with the concentration gradient. If I say go with the concentration gradient, that means it's going from an area of high concentration, lots of particles, to low concentration. It's kind of like maybe if you were at an airport and there were 100 people going to the left. If you were passive, you would kind of just go to the left with them. So you just kind of go with the flow. So going with the flow, or going with the concentration gradient, is going from an area of high concentration to low. So remember that passive is high to low. This does not require energy. So passive transport does not require any ATP energy of the cell. And so that's a good thing. So there's a couple of different types, and you should see a handout that you should be able to fill along with this. Our first type is known as diffusion. So diffusion is a type of passive transport. So if it's passive, is energy required? And the answer is no. So if it doesn't require energy, it is a passive transport. Again, passive is going with the gradient. With the gradient is going from high to low. Some examples, really small, non-polar. Non-polar again means they're sharing equally. Molecules will be diffusing, like your oxygen, your carbon dioxide, just is simple diffusion through your lungs. And so the part of the cell that's involved is that lipid bilayer. It just can kind of go through that cell membrane, that lipid bilayer. And the way it works is particles are moving from that high to low concentration, and they'll do this until it balances out. So anytime you need to pause this video and write this stuff down, you're welcome to pause. All right, so another example, not inside the cell, of just diffusion itself would be like if we took a lump of sugar and we just put it in water, just let it sit over time, it was all together, it is going to spread out. That's what diffusion is. If I were to spray perfume and it just spreads out through the room, that is going from an area of high concentration to low concentration. And this happens through our cells. And in lab, you should be doing a little lab product, a bunch of green particles, and there are a lot more on this side than that side. And the particles are constantly going to be moving, and they're going to always move so that they will spread out. And they'll do this until we get an equal concentration going on. And so that's really what's we get an isotonic relationship until we get it equal on both sides. We see this happening in our cell too. Now this is to illustrate our cell, and right now inside the cell we've got a lot more particles than the outside. If it were to diffuse, then it simply can go through that cell membrane, and it can keep moving until we get equal on both sides. That's just simple diffusion, passive transport. Okay, there is a specific type of diffusion, which is the diffusion of water. And when water moves, that's known as osmosis. I do have a separate video just over osmosis, and so I would like you to watch that. Okay, so osmosis is not, no energy is required, so it is going to be passive. It is only example is water, because the definition of osmosis is the movement of water. And what we're going to see, that water has these special chambers called aquaporins. So when you see that word agua, think water. aquaporin. These are special chambers that water can go through. And so water will go through in order to equal out the sides. And so it always goes towards the more hypertonic side. Again, please watch the osmosis video. And so water will always try to equal out. It's kind of like if your sweet tea is too sugary, you might dilute it down with some water, and so the cell kind of does that too. Water will move in order to dilute, and again, you are supposed to be doing something similar to that in lab, so you'll see that. But just remember that water always moves to the hypertonic side, which either in or out of the cell. And again, please watch that video over osmosis. That will help you to understand those terms. And this is just a neat picture of what the aquaporin. There is our protein channel, and this particular one only lets water molecules go through. Anytime you see this little animation where looks like a little Mickey Mouse, that's always going to show water. All right, our last type that we're going to talk about on this video is facilitated diffusion. I would like to point out it still has the word diffusion. So osmosis was diffusion of water. Diffusion was just diffusion. Facilitated means we need a little help, but it's still diffusion. And so it does not require energy. It is still passive. And this would be for some larger molecules like glucose, and we're going to see it with some of our ions. So we'll be talking about in your muscles how sodium, potassium are going to be moving not into the sodium potassium pump, but how they'll be moving when we get an electrical signal sent. And so the part of the membrane that's going to be involved is there's special protein channels or carriers that are going to help these ions or these molecules move. And it sounds like that requires energy, but it really is not going to require any energy of the cells. So facilitated just means help. Diffusion means no energy required. Okay. And so this is particles are going to move with the gradient. Remember, with the gradient. Passive is always with the gradient. It's going to go from high to low concentration. The only difference between this and regular diffusion is it's going to have some help. Aquaporins help water. That's just special. That's osmosis. And the facilitated diffusion is going to be that protein channel that's going to help. And we are going to see two different types of facilitated diffusion as we continue along in A&P1. And so this is just a little animation showing the carrier. Notice all the stuff out here. There's a lot more out here, but these particles may be too big and just can't go through that lipid bilayer, so they've got to fit through something. So they are going to fit through this little carrier or protein channel to help facilitate them getting out, kind of like opening a door and letting the bigger things out. So you have this on the back of your notes, so you don't have to write these down, but we are going to see both of these terms as we move along. So there are two types of channels that we're going to be seeing. We're going to see one called a ligand-gated ion channel and one called a voltage-gated ion channel. All right, so we're going to try to make this make sense to you. So some of you may work in a hospital. I don't know. Some of you do, but at least you understand. So there's all kinds of doors on a hospital that are locked. And some of these doors, if I have a key, a special key that goes in the hole, I can turn it and I can open a door. Okay. And so the ligand gated, there's going to be a hormone or a neurotransmitter that fits in a certain spot, which is, you can see these purple spots here. And when that hits that spot, these things will open. So ligand gated is like a key that's going to open this channel. It's going to allow things to open. Think of this as a locked door. And then there's others that, I don't know if you've ever been to the ER, but you know, to get back there to those back doors on the ER, someone has to push a special button, and when they push that button, a voltage will send a signal, and then those doors will open. And so we're going to see that when we'll see that with action potentials. And so voltage gated is going to be like a button being pushed with electricity. And so potential difference that you're seeing in this vocabulary word is like an electrical signal. So we've got these two different types. One's going to be like a key, going to open this door, and one's going to be like a voltage shock that's going to open the door. And we're going to see both of these in muscle movement, which is why we go ahead and have that conversation now. So for this video, passive means no energy is required. You've got diffusion, you've got osmosis, which is the diffusion of water, and then you've got facilitated diffusion, which means it's a special channel. So I'll see you on the next video. Please watch the osmosis video, and I'll see you on the active transport.